The 1960s, a portrait of progress. The 1960s saw the rapid growth of the bank's art collection as the nation's new central bank, the Reserve Bank of Australia, began its operations. Previously, the original Commonwealth Bank had performed both commercial and central banking functions. In 1960, Dr. Coombs moved from his position as governor of the Commonwealth Bank to become the first governor of the Reserve Bank, the nation's independent central bank. The bank's head office in Martin Place, Sydney, was designed to exhibit the progressive spirit of modernism, sleek and functional, with the glass curtain wall of the foyer suggesting an aspiration towards clarity and a degree of transparency in its operations. Opened in 1965, the bank's architecture was complemented by a prominent work of sculpture by Margil Hinder, one of the city's first public sculptures of pure abstraction. Within its lobby is a relief sculpture by Bim Hilder, based on the bank's distinctive logo. The modernist design of the building and its new furniture, commissioned from the designer Frederick Ward, created a sympathetic setting for the display of contemporary works of art. Whereas paintings acquired in the 1950s were selected as much for their reprographic qualities on Christmas cards as their physical presence, those chosen for the Reserve Bank became larger, bolder, and more theatrical than their predecessors, while still appearing on the annual card. Like the building materials and furnishings, the artworks also originated in Australia and reflected its contemporary aesthetic. Fred Williams' painting, Chopped Trees, for example, takes the traditional Australian theme of the gum tree and revises its conventional treatment, playing with degrees of abstraction in the work's design. The Reserve Bank's paintings were acquired from the 1960s onwards at new galleries that began to appear in the city's nearby suburbs, such as Paddington, including Rudy Koeman and Kim Benaithen's galleries, as well as the South Yarra Gallery in Melbourne. Both emerging and established artists were added to the collection. In 1962, the bank acquired Sidney Nolan's Burke on a Mountain. Born in Melbourne, Nolan was familiar with the city's monuments to the ill-fated expedition of Burke and Wells. His vision of Burke sees the figure merge with the camel in an image reminiscent of the mythic centaur, suggesting the transformative experience of the outback. A decade earlier, Dr. Coombs had acquired previous examples of Nolan's landscapes of Central Australia. When acquired in 1951, Nolan's international reputation had not been established. His landscapes were thought to be confronting, and their reception at the bank was ambivalent. At the time that the Reserve Bank opened in 1960, artists in Australia were engaged in a debate between the competing values of abstract and figurative painting. The Antipodeans exhibition in Melbourne promoted a manifesto that advocated the lasting significance of the recognizable image and warned against fashionable abstraction. Antipodean artists who upheld the necessity of the recognizable image are reflected in the collection by Clifton Pugh's A Piece of My World, depicting an animal carcass, Arthur Boyd's Winter Landscape, and a moody portrait of sisters by Robert Dickerson. Fellow Antipodean artist Charles Blackman is also represented in the collection with his major work, The Girl in the Checkered Dress, acquired in 1964, seen behind the artist in this photograph. His wife Barbara, a writer and an artist model, was an influential muse for his painting. Like the figure in the bank's painting, Barbara wore a checkered dress as an artist model. Her dress was especially requested for students' examinations at the National Gallery of Victoria Art School, owing to its demanding pattern. In The Girl in the Checkered Dress, the alternating pattern of dark and light continues to the figure's head. Her inward-turning face remains sunken, while her profile is raised and illuminated. Significant examples of abstraction were also acquired for the bank's collection, with artworks by Leonard French, Margot Lewis, and Karl Plater. Karl Plater's paintings typically adapt limited colours, large scale, and reduced shapes to create distinctive abstract works, such as Blue Monument No. 4, acquired by the bank in 1968. Margot Lewis was commissioned to create the tapestry for the bank's boardroom. Woven by Aubusson Tapestries in France, it combined a traditional art form with contemporary abstraction. Announced by the building's architecture and sculptures, the bank's allegiance to modernism continued through its interiors and the incorporation of paintings and decorative arts, including its furniture. As the centerpiece of the bank's boardroom, Margot Lewis' tapestry epitomized the building's integration of modernist design. Dr. Coombs felt affinity with the symbolic art of Leonard French, who deployed the use of rich colors, gilt, and enamel. The bank acquired French's The Coming of the Turtle for its collection, and the governor selected it for display in his office. His room was featured in Vogue's Guide to Living as an elegant example of modern office design, with its artworks accentuating the contemporary design of furniture by Frederick Ward. The Coming of the Turtle alludes to a creation myth or symbolic story that describes the beginning of the world and its habitation by humans. The painting's spiral shapes and circles suggest the enduring mystery of creation, its cycles of life and death. Suitably, when Dr. Coombs retired as the bank's governor in 1968, he was presented with a specially commissioned painting by Leonard French. By the late 1960s, Dr. Coombs had completed the commissioning and acquisition of major artworks for the head office and branches. The bank's new governor, John Phillips, would oversee thoughtful additions to this collection that reflected the work of prominent artists who were emerging in the 1970s.